So once again, a quick disclaimer. This call uh, is being recorded, and we place our recordings on a YouTube channel. If you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And with that, welcome to another session of Azure Power Lunch. And today we are talking about latest update in regards to GraphQL in API management. Okay, so with that, let's quickly get to our agenda. We are going to talk a few minutes about GraphQL API management and what's with, I mean, how API management is supporting GraphQL, and then we will go over the updates, and it's going to be a demo heavy session. So just want to give everybody a heads up. Um, the slides are basically for reference, and I'm going to not read the slides. Basically, GraphQL is a query language for the APIs. It allows you, very simply, allows you to get the data that you need. So let's say that the data is buried in depth in a large object graph. You can pinpoint and get the data that you're actually looking for, and you can do queries in, it allows you to do queries in parallel. Just one thing I want to be kind of a very clear about it. It does not need a special database or special server system. It's basically a kind of a standard. So you can build your server, build a graph service that supports GraphQL. Okay. And what is API management? Azure API management is Microsoft first party API gateway. It it provides an abstraction between the consumer, between the interface of the API that consumers use and the um, actual implementation of the API that you create. Okay, so with that abstraction, you are able to secure your API. You are able to monitor those. You can evolve those, because since implementation is kind of a hidden behind this facade of API management, you can change implementation. So, for example, let's say you start with an API that was actually written in SOAP, but the people wanted in REST. So you can expose a SOAP API as REST, and as you modernize that API, you can slowly change the implementation and let and kind of a slide that implementation instead of the SOAP implementation. So think of it kind of without uh, disturbing your end customers. You are basically modernizing your API. That's the great advantage of API management. And when it comes to GraphQL and API management, I think a year ago we talked about some of the features like ability to host GraphQL API in API management. That was um, supported by API management, and then synthetic API support. So basically, you have, let's say you have a native GraphQL API. You can host it. You can basically use Azure API Management, import it in API Management, used it as a abstraction between that API and your consumer. At the same time, with synthetic API, you can expose API which are not GraphQL. So basically, what API management will do is it will do the translation for you. So your consumer will be talking in GraphQL. API management will do the translation and call your APIs and return the data back to the consumer. So you may be modernizing those API to support GraphQL, but while you are doing that, or maybe they are existing API, whatever they are, it will uh, help you do that translation. And this is called kind of a resolvers in API management, which kind of do that translation. So think of it that consumer, as I said, is calling GraphQL, speaking GraphQL. Behind the scene, you are talking REST. And the latest update that I want to talk about is the support for non API and kind of a systems or services. For example, Azure SQL and Cosmos DB. This is a great addition. So you have, so let's say that you may have a Azure SQL database or a Cosmos DB database, and you have entities stored in that, and you want to expose them through GraphQL. You don't have to write an API. You can just use API management and the resolver support that it has. And here we go. You can expose those data structures um, or data through API management with Graph API support, with GraphQL support. I'm sorry, GraphQL support. I hope I'm not saying Graph API, it's GraphQL support. Any questions? Okay, so let's quickly jump on to the demo and let's see what we are talking about. So let's say that we have, for the demo, I have this database. I'm going to start with Cosmos DB. I have this Cosmos DB, very simple, one database, one container. I have two entities, and this is my structure. I have an ID, I have a title, I have a status. Okay, that's it. Very simple database. And let me just zoom out a little bit so everybody can see it better. Okay. On the other hand, let's go into our API management. This is my API management, and I'm going to start by creating an API. In this case, I'm going to do a GraphQL, and I'm going to name it um, Cosmos 01 APL, very creative name. And let's move on. And just make sure you select, because if you do pass through SQL, a pass through GraphQL, it means you have a GraphQL API behind the scene. In this case, we are doing synthetic GraphQL. And the key thing is you have to have a schema file. And let's pick a schema file here. So select the file. Okay, this is my schema.graphql, and we will take a look at it in 1 second. And this is my URL for the API. Here we go. Let's create it. And now it is showing us the schema. So let's take a look at the schema itself, what it's saying. So first of all, it's a to-do item, ID, title, status. And with GraphQL, you have to define a schema. It tells you what is your entities, what is their hierarchy, and what queries or mutation that you want to do. Queries are just requesting data. Mutation is when you want to manipulate the data, like either create new data, or update existing data or delete data. Okay, um, got it? So that's what schema is all about. So I have created this schema where you have your to-do item, ID, title, status, and then you have create to-do item input. This is looks like this. Replace to do item input. This looks like this, and then you have query, and basically you're just bringing everything together with this, and with each parameters and things like that. And by the way, a detailed discussion into GraphQL is not in the scope of this. And there are very good resources available if you want to know more about GraphQL. I mean, it just covers it in the context of API. Okay. uh, Support. Okay, so let's start with, first of all, a resolver. So what I'm going to do is we want to create a resolver to get the data from one record from uh, our Cosmos DB database. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to do a query. I want to do a to-do item, and it says what your data source is. It HTTP API? No, it's a Cosmos DB. Okay, so I'm going to select that, and with that, as you can see here, let me just this it's a slider inside a slider. As you can see, it's asking you to this connection info, and then it's asking you your query request. So there are multiple ways you can do that, and let me um, paste kind of a provide the information here, and then we will take a look at it together, like what information we are talking about. Okay, so first of all, I'm using a connection string. If you are not familiar with this syntax, basically I'm using my connection string in a name value collection. Ideally, you should be using managed identity based connection, but I'm just using it as a name value connection. It's an name value strings. You can do name value string where you can store secrets. I'm storing it in a key vault and accessing it that way through the managed identity of APIM. As I said, ideally you should be using managed identity of APIM to connect to the database. In any case, this is the name of my database. Um, this is the name of the container. And then in my read request, so you can do a query or you can do a read request. Read request is for one record. I am providing the ID and the partition key, which will pick one record from the database. Got it? Any questions? If not, let's move on. So, okay, so now time to test this thing. Okay, and by the way, I just want to mention, please always do trace when you are testing because it will provide you some very useful information and that will really help you when things do not go your way. Because otherwise, if you just send, I mean, sometime the information that you get, it's not, I mean, the error will not make any sense to you, like what's going on. Okay, especially with these resolvers. So with that, I'm gonna provide an ID. ID is one, and let's do a trace. And it's gonna ask us like, okay, do we want to enable tracing? Yes, we want to enable tracing. Give it a second while it is enabling tracing, and then it will query the data. Okay, the data is queried, and let's take a look. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this data out, and I am going to paste it in here. So this is the JSON data, as you can see. So this is the record that was there in Cosmos DB. We got it very simply without writing a single line of code. We just provided some configuration information, and here we go. So we have now, and I know, I mean, you're gonna say, yeah, this is very trivial example, but still think of it what you can do. I mean, you can enhance this or build this up. You can create more queries, and nobody's stopping you for creating a very complex schema, more queries, and more complex resolver. But once again, you are not writing any code. You're just setting up some configuration information, and here we go. Your API management has become a GraphQL API server now. I'm gonna stop for a second to see if there are any questions. Okay, so let's quickly go back to our second piece. So now we did this one, wonderful, all good. Let's add something that can get us all the items. So once again, I'm gonna create a resolver. I'm gonna go in and to create that resolver, let me just paste some configuration again here. Same thing. Resolver is query to do items, and we are saying it's a Cosmos DB. Okay, just make sure you do that. Otherwise, I mean, it will not work the right way. Okay, so let's go back a little bit up. As you can see here, we have the connection string, to-do list, to-dos, same thing. This is very boilerplate. Now here we have a SQL statement. Okay, we're doing the SQL statement, and it's gonna return us some results. So here we go. Let's create it and let's test it. And the to-do items, I wanna get ID, status, title, all good here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run the trace again. Oh, error. And error is JSON reader error or something. Okay, so this is a error with the JSON reader, and let's look at the trace now. Okay, so this is the trace information. It shows you all the stuff, and I'm not gonna go into that. Um, not relevant to us. This is showing us all the information that API management pass. I'm gonna go down and look at what exactly the error you're getting. It seems like that some data return from Cosmos DB, but it is saying this thing. Error reading J array from JSON reader, J reader item is not an array, blah blah blah. Okay, I don't know what, I can't see what data was returned. How can I see that? That's where we are gonna do some kind of a you know do another thing. So I'm going to add a response. Uh, I'm going to go back to my resolver and try to change the response. So what you can do is you can add a response object if you want a specific response. And in that response object, what I'm doing is, as you can see, there are three sliders, so that's why it's a bit tricky. Um, I am saying set body. I'm using liquid template. If you don't know about liquid template, just know that their liquid template are special templates to display data. API management supported. Uh, Please read about them. They can allow you to go through data, loops, and all that and display the data in the format that you desire. I'm just spitting out some information because what it's going to do is it's going to show me what body was before this transformation and what it is after. So I will be able to see the actual output that is came out before we got this error. Okay, so let's do the save and let's run our test again. So to do items, ID status title, and then we do the trace. And again, the error. Once again, we go down here and this is the sec body that we were looking for. And I'm going to take this out. Oops, copy too much. Okay, copy this, got into the notepad. And if you see here, you can clearly see that the input, which is basically the actual body, has an items. It is not an array. It's an object which has items in it. So we need to transform this data into an array for our use because it is expecting an array of objects. Got it? So that's what we are doing here. So, okay, so let's do this and let's provide the right uh, liquid template so we can convert this data. Once again, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go into the API management. Here we go. And resolvers, query to do items, go down here. And in the response, I am changing the response to this. So this is a liquid template. If you think of it as pseudocode, you're going in, you're building that structure. The last piece is there. So I place comma only if this is not the last item. If you have done any JSON generation using code for objects, normally most of the time it's done, there are software libraries available that do it by default, but if you have to do it, that's how, I mean, you just have to make sure you don't put the comma after the last item because that will break JSON. Okay, so let's quickly save it and let's test it one more time. Okay, to do items, ID, status, title, and um, let's do the trace. Let's do again. Yeah. Okay. So just keep in mind when you update the resolver, it may take a minute. So as you saw, I got the error because resolver, whenever you change it, that change may take a minute to reflect. So you may be, so if you get an error, please try again. Just like here, I mean, it's kind of a stops your heartbeat like, okay, what did I do wrong? No, it's just taking a minute to take into effect. Now we are getting the right data, the two items that are there. Okay. Any questions? Okie doke. Is there anything in the chat window?
I just had a question about you doing a session on the managed identity, getting the key from the key vault. It's interesting to me, but maybe it's too simple for a 30-minute session.
Yeah, probably we will. I mean, we will in some other session. Probably we will talk about it. Definitely. Okay, got it. Yeah, yeah, good idea. Okay, so now we did that. Now we are gonna do one more resolver for the mutation. Remember, this is the query is to get the data, and most of the time you will be doing queries. But for what no API is complete without ability to manipulate the data or change the data. That's where mutation comes in. Okay, so let's do a quick mutation. We want to add a resolver. Once again, it's a mutation. Create to do item. Remember to pick Cosmos DB, and it gives some template code to show you. And what I have done is um, let me get the sample code for create to do item, and we can go from there. Okay, here it is. So we have pasted the code here. Okay, I want you to spend a few minutes, just 1 minute on this code with me. First of all, this part is same as the other resolver. This is just where it is going, what database we are targeting, things like that. This is the write request, and it is an upsert. So what it's going to do is, if the item exists, it's going to update it. If it doesn't exist, it will create it. What is the partition key of the item? It is in the arguments. Okay, so let me just copy this in the notepad here, and we will take a look at it when with the mutation query. Okay, that's that. And then what is the body? Body is the argument of input. Okay, just keep that in mind. Let's create this test, and we are going to do create to do item. We are going to do for test for, or let's do test 10. Test 10 status is S10. Okay, ID status title. So this is the query. So let's get that mutation query, and let's paste it in here as well so we can take a look side by side. So this is your arguments. Okay, what is the name of your argument? It's input. And this is a JSON object. That's that. So this is the JSON object that we are passing in the body. In the partition key is input ID. So this is your partition key. Got it? Very simple. And if you want to use any element, other element from that, you can use it. Got it? So let's go back to our um, here, and let's do a trace. Voila. I mean, let's see if that item is actually created. So we are going to go back here, and this is my Cosmos DB database. I refresh it. Yes, item 10 has been created. Let's now update this item through the same thing. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to call the title to 10A and status to S10A, and then trace again. Here again, the item is updated. Let's come back here and just pay attention. Oh, sorry. Yeah, S10. Look at that. It's S10A and test 10A. So that's that. Um, so I just want to mention I have created a small demo script. This has the schema that we used. This has the two script for the two resolver. I'm sure you have seen the Cosmos DB resolver, and it tells you that please create a Cosmos DB instance and use the same. And then it has the code for you to test, create, update, delete, and all those items. I mean, there's a code for delete item as well. You can take a look. And same for Azure SQL Resolver. Okay. So I already have, since we only have 4 minutes, I just want to show you the SQL Resolver, but I just want to show you this site. So if you want to play around with this stuff, you can. This is a public GitHub, and I have the link in my slide deck as well in the resources. So if you go into the resources, this is the link to the GitHub demo data. Okay, so you can download. You can. I mean, the thing is. Um, if this is kind of if you want to play around with this stuff, follow the section. This is helpful, so that's why I thought I put it out there. Okay, so we have 4 more minutes. I just want to show you the SQL side of it as well, since we talked about it a lot. So I have this SQL database. Once again, there are only one record at this moment. This is an Azure SQL database that I have created, and I've already created an API for it. So let me go back there. Hold on. So I am here. This is APIM and APIs, and this is the uh, Azure SQL API that I have created. Let's open it. And as you can see here, ID, title, status, same schema. And let's take its resolver. And we're going to pick one of the resolver. Let's do query to do items and open this. And as you can see, same thing, I'm using SQL DB connection. In this case, I'm just providing the connection information. Same thing, I'm getting it from name value connection. This is my select statement. So I'm passing this select statement, setting a parameter. And if you have used any other language, I mean, I'm sure you know you create a query and then assign the parameters. That's what we are doing. Same thing. It's coming from the arguments, and that's it. Let's test it out. So if we are here to do item, I want to get item number 2, trace. Here we go. We got the item number 2. I mean, the data is here. As you can see, we got it. So that's simple. I mean, let's take another look at another resolver. Let's look at the uh, create to do item resolver. It's a bit interesting, and look at the query. So this is my query. I am saying if the item exists, then just update it. If the item doesn't exist, then insert it. And then select the item because I want to see the newly created item. And in that, I am providing ID, title, and status as parameters. Very simple. And look at that. Remember, when we are passing the input, it's ID, title, and status parameters from the input. Very simple. So basically, that's how you're doing. And let's do a quick test here. So we do create to do item, and we are going to do two. We are going to do item 2A, and status is S2A as well. ID status this, and let's do a quick trace. As you can see, it has uh, probably updated the item, and we can go in here and let's see, let's run that query again, and the item changed. So I have 1 minute remaining, or oh, we are right on time. Any questions, comments, feedback?
Nothing in the chat, Naveed.
You- I hope everybody gonna get some idea about the API management and its supports for GraphQL, and especially this kind of feature where you can use now non-HTTP services like Azure SQL and Cosmos DB, uh, and expose them as GraphQL API. So thank you very much, and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch, and hope everybody had a wonderful rest of their day and great weekend. Thank you.
Naveed.
Thank you, Naveed. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.